Hello, everyone, and welcome to Battle of the Beast Transformation Takedown, episode number 19. I think. Uh, yeah, 19. I'm Adam, and today we got two more beasts fighting out for a spot in round 2. This is a bit of more of an interesting matchup with two beasts who've done really well in their previous battle, and some of my favourite battles of round 1, actually. One of them actually being my favourite of round 1, and the other being, up there for the creativity aspects. However, it does have its drawback. But other than that, this I think is a good matchup, which I think is a suitable point for the midpoint of this matchup, of this round. So with that, let's introduce the opponent, the competitors. Represents Series 9, the Warlock Staff, the killer of Nyxa the Deathbringer in round 1, we have Spikefin, the Water King, versus his opponent, the killer of Krokol, the Father of Fear, in round 1. And one of the 6 Knights of Forton, a representative of Series 10, Master of the Beasts, we have Tecton, the Armored Giant. So with that, we have an interesting matchup, if you ask me. I really do like this matchup. Whilst it may seem like I'm a bit restricted on what I can do, and that may be so, I think I do have a good idea of how this battle will go. So, yeah, let's get into this. Let's go into the stats first, because we need to know the stats before we get into the battle, as always. Spikefin the Water King, Brenner, an innocent fisherman, was slashed by Malva with a poisoned blade and drowned in the sea. He re-emerged as Spikefin, half man, half sea creature. Spikefin's ferocious claws, razor-sharp fins, and huge whipping tail can destroy any boat sailing in his path. Age 39, power 250, magic level 180, fright factor 85, size 220. Powers and abilities: natural weaponry, underwater breathing, enhanced strength, and weapon mastery. Equipment is a trident, and weaknesses is struggle to breathe out of water and reversion. Tecton the Armored Giant. Tecton is an ancient beast once defeated by the White Knight of Forton. With 4 powerful legs, his body is covered in a thick hide. Hold on, what? Let's try that again. With 4 powerful legs, his body is covered in a thick hide of overlapping armor plates of bristling with spikes. His short legs don't stop him from moving quickly. Tecton has a different method of chasing his prey. He can curl into a ball like a giant hedgehog and roll across the ground to crush his victims. Age 323, power 208, magic level 132, fright factor 78, size 304. Powers and abilities: natural weaponry and spike projectiles. Tecton has a spike tail from which he can fire spikes. He also has sharp claws. Natural armor, ball form, enhanced speed, and cold resistance. The enhanced speed is being able to keep up with the golden leg armor of the golden armor, and weaknesses is pierceable shell, dentable shell, and a removable shell. So with that, let's cut back to me for the battle. Okay, so now we've done the stats of Spikefin the Water King and Tecton the Armored Giant. Time to get to the battlefield. The battlefield is going to be the clock arena from the Hunger Games Catching Fire. And with that, let's get into the battle. So as the chamber doors open, Spikefin immediately comes out through the water exit, swims around the entire arena, and pokes his head out of the surface near the centre of the island, recognizing this familiar arena, and just roars into the arena, lifting up his trident, showing that he's here, ready for blood. And whilst the crowd cheers, the other knight, the White Knight, might I add, comes out of the chamber, almost without a sound, not begging for attention at all, just makes his way out, and when spectators notice, they stop cheering. Spikefin notices this and looks over and sees this knight. Spikefin's familiar with the Knights of Forton, knowing that they are a threat of this tournament, knowing that 5 of them have made it through to this round. And he knows that if he goes against one, he needs to fight really good. He's already aware of his teammate, Karaka, who has fought one of the Knights of Forton and was lucky enough to win. Will Spikefin be able to do the same? Is what Spikefin wonders. As he dives underwater, he immediately makes his way to where he saw the White Knight, bursts through the surface of the water, and tackles the White Knight, pulling him into the water. As Spikefin immediately wraps his tail around the knight, he bites down onto the armor as hard as he can and scratching at him, trying to break the knight. But the knight doesn't feel it. The armor's that sturdy. Whilst he's constricted, what he does is he just turns into Tecton, pushing Spikefin aside, knocking him aside with one swipe of his claws, before reversing back to the knight, and the knight makes his way out of the water and back onto the surface, grabs his lance and rope, and charges up towards the centre island, picking up a rock along the way. Spikefin, once regaining himself for being knocked aside, finds his trident and charges up towards the surface of the water, where he looks out to see the White Knight just standing in the centre, almost laid back in sorts. Lance is on the floor, and all he's holding is a rope. As he gestures for Spikefin to come near, Spikefin, angered by this taunting, charges up towards the knight and goes to throw his trident at him. The knight just sidesteps, avoiding the trident as it flies right past him and impales into the wall on the other end of the arena. The knight then throws one end of the rope towards Spikefin. Spikefin, seeing that a rock is tied to it, and he goes to deflect it, but he misses it as the rock goes right past him and wraps around him as it hits him in the head. As it continues to wrap around him, it hits him in the head and binds his arm to his head. As Tecton then the knight pulls the rope towards him, he's pulling Spikefin out of the water. Spikefin, realizing this, tries to pull back, trying to get himself free, and as he's already onto the rocky surface of the arena, is when he finally uses his claws and slashes right through the rope. And as he's about to roll back into the water, he feels a sharp pain shoot up through his whole body as he looks down to his tail and sees that a lance has actually been impaled in his tail, pinning him to the rock. Spikefin looks in horror as he turns around, tries to grab at the lance to pull it out of the ground as hard as he can, which is firmly in. But once he finally does, he looks up and sees not the knight, but Tecton, looking down on him with a sinister grin on him. As he goes to bite down on Spikefin, grabbing onto his arm, he pulls Spikefin right into the air and flailing him around like a rag doll, throwing him around everywhere. He lets go and flings Spikefin directly against a wall, where Spikefin just falls into the water. As Spikefin regains himself, he comes back up to see Tecton just covering the entire centre island, staring at where he last saw him. Tecton turns round and swings his tail, shooting a bunch of spike projectiles directly at Spikefin. Spikefin ducks below water just in time to avoid that, in which he breaks up the surface of the water, grabs the trident before avoiding another set of spikes, and taking a deep breath, knowing what he has to do, he charges up towards Centre Island, jumps out of the water, and using his trident goes to bring it down directly on Tecton's shell. But until he jumped out, he didn't notice that Tecton's not there anymore, and instead it's the White Knight. Getting his accuracy completely off, thinking he was aiming for a large target, but instead it was only a small one, he misses, and the trident impales into the ground. The knight, wasting no time, grabs the lance, knocks it against Spikefin's arm. Spikefin loses grip of the trident. The White Knight grabs the trident, brings it up, and stabs Spikefin in the arm that was hit with the lance, pinning Spikefin down to the ground. As Spikefin roars in pain, he goes to grab at the trident, trying to pull it out of his arm, just making more pain for him. Unbeknownst to him, though, the knight goes to grab the rope and wraps it around Spikefin's neck and pulls as hard as he can, pulling his head up whilst his arm is still pinned down. Spikefin stops trying to go for the trident and trying to slash at the rope to stop him from being strangled, but the knight was way ahead of that. Lifting one boot, he pins Spikefin's other arm down to the ground, with so much force breaking Spikefin's wrist on his free hand. Spikefin, roaring in more pain, is struggling to break free. He's trying to use his tail and wrap it around the knight to pull it backwards. And as he pulls the knight backwards, releasing his grip off the rope, Spikefin's finally able to breathe as he uses his tail to try and pull the trident out from his arm, but it's still not working. He turns around and he feels a shadow looming over him. He looks up, sees that it's still day, but when he turns around, he's greeted by Tecton, who wastes no time by biting onto his tail, pulling him upwards, whilst Spikefin's arm is still pinned to the rocky terrain from his trident. Spikefin's roaring in pain over this, but can't seem to do anything. Tecton lifts up one claw and slashes at Spikefin's tail, dropping his body down to the ground, whilst Tecton still has his tail hanging from his mouth. Spikefin, gasping for breath, struggling to breathe at this point, trying not to fade out of life, for that fact, stares up at this looming threat, which is Tecton, who then curls up into his ball, doesn't do much, but just rolls forward very slowly as each spike slowly penetrates Spikefin's body. Spikefin roaring in pain over this, as the spikes gradually make their way up closer and closer to his head before finally impaling his head, crushing his entire body over the giant ball that is Tecton, as Tecton rolls over and makes his way onto a spoke, being careful not to fall in, might I add, not to fall into the water. Tecton then reverts back to his knight form, who stands back up from his crouched position, turns around and to see the pin cushion that is now Spikefin, and satisfied and looking at Spikefin, he sees an opportunity as he makes his way back to the center, seeing Spikefin's lifeless body just there in a shocked, scared facial expression, seeping blood almost everywhere on him. He picks up his lance, his rope, with the rock, and then, using both hands, hoists the trident right out of the ground almost effortlessly, and brings all of that with him back to his chamber. So with that, Tecton has won, Spikefin has lost. If you think Spikefin should win, please comment below. I think that how my words final, and Tecton's moving on to the next round. And being honest, there wasn't really much of a competition, if you ask me. I do not see a way in which Spikefin could win, but I made it as interesting as I can. So please bear with me there. So yeah, Tecton is in round 3 now, and he now has a trident. So he stole the trident from Spikefin, so now he has a lance, a rope, and a trident. The trident would be able to be sheathed on his back. Lance, I don't know where you store lances, but he can store the trident on his back, so he can carry 3 weapons, but technically one's a rope, so do with that as you will. The rope is attached to his belt, so really it's only his lance he needs to put down if he's going to use another weapon. But he has 3 weapons and the ability to transform into this beast. Okay, anyway, Texas moved to round 3. There's not really much I can really say about that. I can't see in which Spikefin could win. Yes, he is aware of the Knights of Forton, and knowing that his teammate went against one. I can't actually narrate a way in which Spikefin could beat Tecton, because it's Tecton. If it was any other Knight of Forton, maybe, but not Tecton. So that's all for this time. This was a very one-sided battle. If you like what you saw, leave a like, leave a comment, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll have 2 more beasts fight out for a spot in round 3. So far, we have 4 beasts from Series 10 make it through, and we're on the 4th battle of round 2. Yeah, So, one more beast left for Series 10 to fight, and if that beast from Series 10 makes it through to the next round, then I think the teammate rule needs to be revoked in round 3. Because we'll have 4 battles in round 3 and 5 beasts from Series 10. That's not going to work out. But we'll cross that bridge if we get to it. But for that, I'll see you next time.